Hey, everybody, welcome back to another Motivation Monday podcast for Monday, June 11th, 2018. Hope you had a great weekend and hope you're ready to get into the week. So, this week I wanted to talk to you about a podcast that somebody sent me recently. It's the Joe Rogan podcast, which I've checked out a little bit before. And somebody sent me this episode that features Matthew Walker, who's a neuroscience and psychology professor at University of California, Berkeley. And he founded and now directs the Center for Human Sleep Science. And this episode was so cool. I learned so much listening to this particular episode of the podcast. Joe Rogan has some really, really cool guests on from all corners of different professions and just some really, really interesting stuff that can benefit you in many different ways. And this was just an awesome episode. Now, this doesn't directly relate to music, so let me make that as a little bit of disclaimer. But I actually think that it relates to everything in our lives, including music. And Matthew Walker, this professor of neuroscience, he sheds so much light on just how important sleep is, and especially to creative people. So people that need to use both the left and the right brain in their daily life and really rely on their brain functioning at full capacity in order to do their job, right? So for musicians, this is super important because for a professional musician, full-time musician, one of the things we have to do is we have to wake up in the morning, check our email, figure out if we've double booked ourselves on gigs, check our teaching schedules. If we're touring, we need to make sure that everything is in line for the tour that we're about to go on. So a lot of really, really analytical thinking. And then obviously, at another point in the day, we want to turn on that creative switch in our brain and really be able to put all the sometimes logical thinking behind us and really rely on the other half of our brain. And what Matthew Walker does is he really illuminates to a very specific degree how important getting a good night's sleep is. And he also talks about, how tough it is to get a good night's sleep in today's day and age with smartphones and TVs in every room and all the kind of stuff that can rob our sleep time. Some of the things that caught me in the podcast that I thought were just so interesting is that he said that some scientists and, people who study sleep and the human brain are starting to classify lack of sleep as a carcinogen. And that's pretty crazy. I would have never thought about it that way. But if you listen to this podcast, you will hear him talk about the links between lack of sleep and cancer, lack of sleep and all these other kinds of debilitating diseases that I don't think we'd ever even put in the same category. And he also talks about the fact that, some of us think that we are these special people who can get by on a very, very small amount of sleep. But in reality, we're fooling ourselves. We're just making ourselves believe that because we don't want to commit ourselves to a full night of 8 hours of sleep. Very, very illuminating stuff. And I gotta tell you, I've been almost scared to not get enough sleep after I listened to this podcast. And it really has carried over in my day-to-day life. I find that when I get on my instrument and I have to think really, really hard about what I'm doing, it really makes a huge difference whether I've gotten a full night's sleep or not. Now, that's not to say that I can get away with it every night. It's just the nature of my life that sometimes I'm going to have a lack of sleep. It's just the way things happen sometimes. And I'm sure for a lot of you out there, it's the same. There are just unavoidable times when we get a severe lack of sleep. But I think if we make sleep a little bit more of a priority in our lives, we're going to see just a huge, huge increase in productivity, getting more done in a shorter period of time because our brain is firing on all cylinders instead of being really, really tired, which sometimes we can get used to living our life tired so that we don't even notice it when it's actually happening, which is really scary stuff in my opinion. But I will say that I have noticed that this has made a tremendous impact on my life. And from now on, I'm really going to make sleep more of a priority than I have in the past. So I'm going to link up to the podcast in the show notes. But if you don't want to go to the website, simply Google Joe Rogan Experience number 1109 Matthew Walker. And it'll come up on YouTube. It'll come up on your favorite podcast service. Really check this one out. This is, I think, a really, really important discussion that Joe Rogan has chosen to have with this particular scientist, and it really sheds a lot of light. While I don't enjoy every single episode of this podcast, this is one that really made an impact on me, and I'm really, really glad that somebody sent it to me and I was able to check it out and learn so much. I promise you will gain something from this episode. So go check it out. You can find it in the show notes, or you can simply Google it, like I said, and try to get a little bit more sleep this week. I guess that's the moral of the story, okay? All right, we'll see you on Friday with a regular episode. Hope you have an awesome week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.